We have a changing world. G20 plays an important role because this is a platform where different countries are coming together, and there were interesting decisions in the past. It was not possible to break up the discussions at the Indonesia summit. Uh, African Union came to G20 at the summit in New Delhi, and now we have a very important G20 summit ahead. My question to you is, which is your professional background for such summits?
Well, I am actually at the moment an academic. I am a professor at the Political Science Institute of the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro. At the moment, I am the vice president, the vice director, better, of the Institute of Social Science and Philosophy, in which our department is one of the whole departments. But in the past, I have been a journalist. I was the editor and finally the director of a magazine which circulates over 3 decades in various languages, starting in Spanish, then also in Portuguese, and for a short period, or not so short, but not as long as the other two languages, also in English, which was called Third World. And from that experience, which I think it was a very extraordinary reach for me because it allowed me to visit and to stay for long periods in some African and Asian countries, not only in Latin America. And therefore, I think that my vision as an academic is very much impacted by this former experience. I was born in Uruguay and I am Brazilian not by naturalized because I have been in Brazil for the last 40 years. Yeah. I
Yes,
think basically that's have a PhD in history, but I also have undergraduate in social sciences and journalism, of course.
so very broad background for such events like G20 summit. Uh, my question to you, the summit in Brazil is very specific. Uh, which are the main points in your view?
I think as you mentioned, it is very specific because one of the traditions in Brazil, and I think that started with the Rio summit in 1992, this very important summit for the environment and development, yeah, which has been at the same time a formal summit for the UN, but also a very important and massive summit of the peoples, no? Simultaneously. And I think that marked for Brazil a very rich experience that has been recovered in some way by the Brazilian government now. Because the present G20 in Brazil, which will take place in November, it will be preceded by a summit by the people, yeah, a civil society summit. That was a proposal announced by President Lula in New Delhi when he was entering this period of having Brazil the presidency of the G20, and is at this moment at the very important stage of having started the meetings of different groups that are part of this civil society summit. Yeah, and for instance, just to mention to you, these meetings will be let us say isolated or related to specific groups of civil society. For example, think tanks, they have their own meetings. Youth, they also, women, uh, for the cities, urban challenges, business, startups, parliaments, the parliamentarian representatives of the G20 will also meet. And there is a very interesting innovation. uh, well, the social summit is an innovation itself, of course, but there is among this important innovation, there is one particular interesting, I think, to mention, a novelty, which is coordinated effort of the Brazil Federal Supreme Court to have to bring together the presidents of the Supreme and Constitutional Courts of the G20 members countries. I think that's very interesting to think that also the lawyers, yeah, and the members of Supreme Courts are trying to meet each other, to understand the common challenges, and to try to have a global vision of the justice, which is, of course, a key base, yeah, of the UN institutions, for instance, yeah. So, in this sense, I think that this meeting in Brazil is going to have an impact on public opinion, and I hope that it would be this social summit, particularly as massive as the government would like to be, would like to have. They are thinking to receive more than 4,000 people from the G20 countries, and the government is going to support their presence with lodgement and etc. So it's an effort, a real important effort. But you asked me about the main dimensions that Brazil is trying to put into discussion, yeah, as the summit of the head of states. Well, the definition of the Brazilian government was about three main subjects, yeah. The fight against hunger, poverty, and inequality is really important for the present government in Brazil, for Lula's government. The dimensions, all the dimensions of the sustainable development, that means to analyze the economic, social, and of course, environmental dimension, and at least and not less important, the reform of the global governance. So, to think about the proposals for this challenge of having a renewed, yeah, global governance. That are the main subjects. Of course, all of each of these subjects means a lot of possibilities of analysis, and it will have that they're started yet the discussions at different levels, because of course the summit at the level of the head of states is the most important. This is the result, yeah, of this process, but the process has started. And it's interesting also to mention that the Brazilian government decided to have a very decentralized process of discussions. That means that important cities in different parts of the Brazilian territory, representing all the regions, are going to be part of the cities involved in these discussions. For instance, from the northern part, the Amazon region, Some meetings are going to be held in Manaus and Belém. Yeah. In the central region, of course, Brasilia, which is the Brazilian capital, and also the important region from the environmental perspective, which is Cuiabá in Mato Grosso, which is another ecosystem very important, Pantanal, yeah, from the central part of Brazil, central west part of Brazil, from the northeast part of Brazil, which is also a very populated and important region, by other governments, not so vision, but Lula's government has paid a lot of attention to this region. They are going to be meetings in Fortaleza, in Salvador, San Luis, Teresina, yeah. And from the southern part in Porto Alegre, I don't know, because as you may know, at this moment, Porto Alegre is over a great tragedy of flooded areas. Yeah, but hope it will be recovered by November, or at least 2 or 3 months after, before the conference. Sao Paulo, of course, is going also to receive some of the meetings, and also Foz do Iguaçu, which is the for the important region, and which is in the frontier of Paraguay, Argentina, and Brazil. So as you see, the whole country in some way is going to be part of this very rich process. Yeah.
Very interesting. Uh, the question is now, the future conference of UN was proposed for September this year. So the G20 summit will be after
Af- After, yeah,
this.
yeah.
So how
Well,
will the approach of Brazil to this future conference?
yeah, you see, this United Nations Summit on the future, yeah, it will happen in a moment in which I may say the United Nations as a whole is, um, I think, is in a very sour mood, because credibility of the United Nations is a stuck. Yeah. So, what would Brazil put? I'm speculating, because there is no official position of the Brazilian government on that summit. Yeah, but as one of the dimensions that was chosen by the Brazilian government for the G20 summit was the global governance and the new way of having this in mind, and the importance that the government has given to the presence of social civil society in the discussions, trying to bring to the official summit, to the presidential summit in November, the results of this, the civil society proposals, and is, if possible, to introduce those proposals in the official resolutions. I think that Brazil will bring this proposal to this UN summit of the future, to put more attention on a very open discussions, transparency at the all levels of the United Nations, and perhaps to strengthening in a very honest way the civil society participation at all the UN levels. Yeah, that means, for instance, perhaps to have a special meeting not only for the General Assembly as usual, but the General Assembly plus the global society, or maybe a special General Assembly of the civil society. I don't know, but I'm quite sure that Brazil will put an emphasis on the necessity of having a more plural, dynamic expression of this civil society at all levels of the United Nations as one of the challenges to recover in some way the credibility that the United Nations has lost in the last decades. Yeah.
Yes, one of the main points of loss of credibility was justice. We see this now in this
Yeah.
process that they call on sanction when Netanyahu, for example,
Yeah.
shall be put on trial. Very interesting in this context, also the meeting of the High Court, etc., in Brazil. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
a
and
pity that
yeah, let me excuse me for interrupting, but it came to my mind a very interesting detail, and it is that the troika of the G20, which is formed by the former presidency, which was India, now Brazil, which has the presidency, and the next one, which will be South Africa. There are three members of the BRICS, and particularly South Africa has uh, taken this initiative to put Israel in the International Court of Justice, and Brazil has supported very emphatically this initiative. So it's quite interesting what you have mentioned. The credibility of justice, yeah, is at stake. Yeah, yeah,
so it's very interesting that this question is also included into the G20 summit discussions in Brazil. There's
yeah,
an own meeting.
yeah. Yeah, the Supreme Court in Brazil is leading the process of this kind of discussion, and is drawing a series of online and also face-to-face meetings on this subject.
In your perspective, which possibility has science in this process?
Science is one of the dimensions which is included in this civil society summit. Specifically, I didn't mention there is another one which is also as new as the Supreme Court. It is oceans, thinking that among the all the challenges in relation to environment, to have a better knowledge about the dynamic of oceans would be very important to prevent more disasters. And so it is also a novelty of this region. But science has its own space. It will take, I think, very interesting debates on science, of science as a tool to collaborate, particularly in relation to environment, for instance. Yeah, I think it is a key tool. Yeah, and in particular also in a moment that we have through the COVID-19 experience, those groups that are negationists are denying the role of science. So I think to emphasize at the G20 civil society summit the role and the space for science, I think it would be also an interesting result of this Brazilian proposal. Uh, Undoubtedly, yeah, undoubtedly. It's interesting to say that this civil society summit will take place during 2 days, and 2 days before the official summit. So the results will be available for the head of states to have an idea, or more than an idea, an analysis, a global analysis of civil society on the subjects they are going to discuss and on the resolutions they are going to approve.
I think this is very important also for aspects of the new UN, because one of the uh, points of the negative points in the past was that only state representatives could be involved in decision processes. And when we look at the constitution of UN,
Yeah.
it's a constitution for the people, not a constitution for the states.
Yeah, we the people, the charter says, yeah.
Yes, so uh, it's your perspective that now with also Brazil, with the efforts of Brazil, there will be a perspective for UN, perhaps in the sense of the Charter of UN, isn't it?
Well, I hope so, because we have to have a future, a perspective, a positive perspective for the future. We have to recover the trust in the institutions we have. If not, what we have? War, the rule of the one who has the best army and imposed to the rest what they consider their own interests. I think that we have to recover the trust, yeah, at what we have, or if not, to create an alternative. I don't know. I hope that the mind of the global community, the majority of the world, yeah, will be smart enough, courageous enough to have a proposal, a concrete proposal to really to construct, to build up a future for all, yeah, and not what is the most immediate perspective, which is very, very sad, yeah, and worried, yeah, yeah. So I think the credibility, the trust on the institutions is really at this moment what should be the main focus of those who are the responsible for the destiny of humanity. Yeah, and trust is only possible if we have institutions that work. That's also, yeah. If not, how to trust? Not only words, beautiful words, but to have action. Yeah, coherent action. Yeah.
I think this is a very good perspective to go in action. And it's very interesting what you said about Brazil and G20. I thank you very much. And I hope we will have further cooperation. Thank you.
Of course, I would like to thank you for this special and very important space to which you invite me. I'm very glad to be here with you and with all the people who accompany your work. Thank you very much.
Thank you.